Now that Shazam 2 has officially hit theaters, we get to see Zachary Levi reprise his role as the titular hero. But with all of the drama going on at DC Studios these days, is Shazam 2 just straight up doomed from the start? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to stay tuned. Shazam! All right, that didn't work, and now I just feel dumb. Let's try that one more time. Shazam! Going into Shazam 2, I had a lot of questions and concerns. I can tell you right off the bat that none of the trailers for Shazam 2 actually sold me on going to see the movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a huge fan of the first Shazam, mostly because I really enjoyed the low-level stakes, and it was essentially Tom Hanks' big, but a superhero movie. And while the first movie was fun, enjoyable, witty, with some random dark moments in it throughout, I really didn't think that going into this second movie that it was going to do the first one any justice. Not to mention that this movie really doesn't have a place in the DCU going forward, especially with all of the new recent projects that James Gunn announced. So needless to say, I came into this with really low expectations. But the question remains, now that I officially saw the movie, are all of the questions and fears that I had confirmed? And to that I would say yes and no. Trust me, I'll explain that. But before I do that, I want to announce a massive spoiler warning. So if you have not seen Shazam 2 and don't want the movie ruined for you, go ahead and click off right now, go see the movie, and then come back and let me know what your thoughts are. To accurately summarize some of my thoughts on this movie, I wanted to go through some of the things I liked and disliked about it. And let's go ahead and start with the positives. First off has gotta be the performances. Zachary Levi as Shazam is just as entertaining as ever, and you can really tell he's having the absolute time of his life being the superhero. In fact, I thoroughly enjoyed pretty much all of the performances from the Shazam family. A Shazamly, if you will.
Move this man!
They really do an exceptional job selling the fact that they're a bunch of foster kids who have come up together through the system and are forging incredible bonds that only brothers and sisters can make. And I really enjoyed their family dynamic. But I also appreciate the fact that the movie shows them as not really figuring out the whole superhero thing, especially considering that they're just a bunch of kids who literally got superpowers. I also thought that there were some pretty solid comedic moments in the film. Granted, it didn't make me laugh as much as the first movie did, but still, don't get me wrong, there were plenty of funny moments in this movie. And when I go back to think about it, most of the comedic moments that I actually laughed at came from Jack Dylan Grazer as Freddy. I just appreciate the fact that that kid has a lot of comedic talent, and I also really appreciate the moments that gave his character much needed levity. I feel like he was able to toe the line between incredibly funny and annoying, but then also heartfelt and caring. Oh, and thank God that they got rid of that stupidly cringy joke that they had put in the trailers.
I just threw a truck at a dragon. I love my life.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Now granted, is the movie as a whole kind of borderlining on corny? Absolutely. However, I do believe that they toe the line pretty well between corny and just straight up cringe. Again, it's not gonna have things that are groundbreaking or things that are just gonna blow your mind. But the way I see it is that if it keeps your attention for 2 hours, then to me, that's a win. Also, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the CGI was actually really good.
What?
Gosh, did I just say that about a recent superhero project? Am I going soft? The way I see it is that there was no CGI shot that was so bad that absolutely took me out of the movie. One of the biggest positives that I wanted to highlight was the color grading and the lighting of some of the actors and the environments that they interact with. For example, in the final battle between Shazam and the dragon, you see all the lightning bolts flashing around the screen, and you see his suit kind of reflect in whatever direction the lightning bolts are headed. I thought that was pretty cool. Again, the idea of me complimenting slightly above average CGI would be something that I would have never mentioned before, but with the absolute dumpster fire that was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, oh my gosh. We take what we can get these days.
Why are you boring me? I'm right.
One positive that I got out of the film that was actually a pretty big surprise to me was the antagonists. When I was sitting there in the movie, I thought that the Daughters of Atlas actually had a pretty intriguing motive. Granted, it still has the whole I'm gonna conquer the human world thing. But when Helen Mirren's character, I think her name was like Hespera? I don't know. But anyway, the old lady character, she actually said some things that made sense. I'm basically paraphrasing here, but the way she worded it to Shazam was basically, what would you do if someone came into your house and stole your stuff, took it away, and then gave the stuff that they stole to a bunch of kids who never deserved or should have had it to begin with? What would you do in that situation, right? You would want to go and get it back. And I found myself sitting in the theater going, yeah, all right, I understand. Granted, the whole Tree of Life thing was pretty convoluted, but I guess we still had to get our massive third act fight scene. And speaking of that, the third act of this movie was actually pretty strong. You had the Shazamly taking on all of the orcs and all of those Narnia-looking beasts. While they were freaking riding unicorns, it was almost so crazy that I just couldn't help but enjoy myself. In the final battle with Shazam taking on Lucy Liu's character, who is literally riding a dragon, all I can really think of is that stuff is pure spectacle, and I'm here for it. I think the third act actually summarizes the movie itself pretty well as a whole. It's big and bombastic, but it also doesn't compromise on the heartbeat of what drives the heroes forward. And that, of course, is the message of family. Also, I don't know if this was meant to be part of the continuity, but I low-key actually was impressed that they kept the random, really dark scenes from the first movie. You know how the majority of the first movie was kind of lighthearted with Shazam just having fun with his powers? Then all of a sudden you cut to an office boardroom scene where the 7 deadly sins are mass murdering a bunch of people and eating people's heads and all that jazz? Yeah, we kind of get that as well in Shazam 2, where you'll be having these moments where you're just having fun, there's a bunch of lighthearted jokes, and then some guy just like is mind controlled and walks off the top of a building, or these monsters in the third act just start really tearing into people. You're just not used to that kind of stuff. In most superhero movies, you're used to people feeling a little flighty or not very weighty, if that makes sense, where, you know, they get hit, they just kind of flutter in the air for a while and they stand up and they go,
"Whoa, that was crazy."
But in this one, you actually felt like people were getting hurt and potentially killed. And that makes me sound really sick, but I think it also added to the urgency of having to stop the villains because it felt like they were actually doing damage to the population. Now, the film is not perfect, and there are some negatives that I actually wanted to cover. So without further ado, here we go. If you're looking for a movie that's anything deeper than a goofy, enjoyable superhero movie, you'll definitely be disappointed. Shazam 2 definitely doesn't do much of anything original, and it's things that we've seen 1,000 times before in other superhero movies. Next, and this one really could be a little nitpicky, but I don't care. It still bothered me. I'm really not a fan of the superhero suits in Shazam 2 compared to Shazam 1. The new ones just felt extremely over-designed, and there was just a bunch of unnecessary stuff on the costume. And the biggest difference for me is the lightning bolt. I really liked the huge lightning bolt that's right in the middle of the chest in the first Shazam costume. I thought it was pretty comic book accurate, and it also just looked really dope. But when you compare that to the smaller and more lapel looking lightning bolt on the new suits, I just really find myself liking the original. And then we get back into the problem that spans for pretty much all superhero movies, and that's just sometimes simple is better. Just stop over designing these costumes. Also, and this is probably one of the biggest spoilers that I'm gonna talk about, so you have been warned. What was that Wonder Woman cameo? It felt so awkward and out of place in more ways than just one. I mean, we get introduced to Wonder Woman when we're literally mourning Billy's death at the end of the movie when he sacrifices himself to save everybody else. And especially with all the upheaval at DC Studios, for a second I was like, oh crap, are they really gonna kill off Billy Batson and Shazam and just kind of move on to what's next? And I wanna reiterate that the mood is extremely somber. People are crying, everyone's sad. This is a deeply emotional time. And everyone's over here like,
Can't believe he's dead.
and then it goes from that to like, what are we doing? That tonal shift just happened way too quickly. Which reminds me, I was really disappointed with the fact that there was hardly anybody in the theater when I went to go see this. Now mind you, my wife and I went to this opening night, but there's a total of only like 3 people in the actual theater. And I personally do believe that the lack of attendance to this movie shows that DC has pretty much killed any kind of momentum for this going forward. When they announced that they're gonna be creating this whole new phase 1 of DCU projects, they pretty much said that all of the Zack Snyder stuff or characters like Shazam are basically gonna mean nothing going forward. So naturally, this can be directly correlated to the attendance. Why would the casual paying audience want to go see a movie that in the grand scheme of things means absolutely nothing? So yeah, no wonder nobody's going to see these movies. And that's why I place the blame solely at the feet of the DC executives. Now, I'm not defending Shazam 2 because I think it's some sort of masterpiece. In fact, I still think that this is about as average as it gets for a superhero movie. But on the flip side, I also feel bad for everybody who worked on this movie because it really was given a bad hand from the start. And to be honest, I'm gonna be really bummed if this ruins any potential hope of Zachary Levi returning in the future as Shazam. Is there something else I was gonna talk about? Oh yeah, the post-credit scenes. There's 2. I think the first one is the one with Hardcourt and the tech guy from the Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker TV show. It's basically just the two of them recruiting Shazam to join the Justice Society of America. And yeah, with the failure of the Black Adam movie, no matter what Dwayne Johnson says, this pretty much makes the entire scene useless. Because since it's pretty much confirmed we're not going to have Shazam face off against Black Adam, I just don't see the point of even having this as a post-credit scene to begin with. And that takes us to the second post-credit scene, which finally sees the return of Dr. Sivana and Mr. Mind. But this is literally just them doing the exact same thing that they did in the post-credit scene of the first Shazam movie, where it essentially is Dr. Sivana saying, I want to get out of here, let me out of prison, and Mr. Mind's like, oh, I have a plan. Makes me kind of upset, because Mr. Mind would have been a super cool villain for the sequel. But since the studio decided not to use him in Shazam 2, I am extremely doubtful about whether or not he's actually going to be able to do anything going forward, because it's looking less and less likely that a third movie is even going to be made. So if that's the case, think about it. We literally had two separate post-credit scenes from two separate movies that are teasing the exact same thing, only to have none of that paid off whatsoever. You tell me how ridiculous that sounds. But as much as that sucks, at least DC isn't characterized by giving us post-credit scenes that were quickly thrown together only to mean absolutely nothing going forward.
Meanwhile,
Black Adam, we should talk.
But now I want to turn it over to you guys. Sound off in the comments below and let me know what your thoughts are on Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods. Or even just tell me about what your thoughts are about the future of Shazam in the DCU. Let me know if you have any crazy theories or just something that's on your mind. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to join the family. Every little thing that you guys do makes a huge impact on my small channel, and I cannot do what I do without your guys' support. But with all that out of the way, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.